Tuesday interview. My name is Dave Savage. It's always an honor to represent the Mortgage Coach community and bringing in great, authors, loan officers, just amazing people. And today is no exception. So first of all, everybody on this call, you are a mortgage coach, which means you're dedicated to helping families make the most educated decision possible when getting a mortgage, and you're dedicated to using technology to your advantage, more specifically mobile technology. So whether that's a first-time home buyer in a Pete's coffee shop like this picture right here, or whether you're meeting with a family in a coffee shop, walking them through options, whether they're coming into your office, you're always delivering that with technology. So we've got a great guest today. She's going to provide, tactics, strategies to be a more powerful presenter. Some of those strategies transition well to speaking to large groups, but they even speak well to speaking to small groups. Or even when it comes to making your Mortgage Coach video, there's going to be takeaways that Tanis is going to share today. So Tanis, this is my first time interviewing you, first time to the Mortgage Coach community. Welcome.
Thank you, Dave. I'm excited to be here.
Good. Well, I want to do a couple follow-ups from last week, and then I'll more formally introduce you and have you take the stage and provide a powerful virtual keynote. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Good. So first, I just want to do a bit of a debrief on last week's call with Robert Stover. Got a lot of positive feedback. It was very well reviewed. I would say out of 100 interviews that I've done, definitely the types of ratings and feedback was in the top 10%. I saw a lot of engagement in our Power User Facebook group. Just a reminder, folks, if you've done 100 or more total cost analysis, you're eligible to be part of that secret Facebook group. And, if you're not already added, you can send me an email or message me on Facebook, and I'll add you if you've done 100 or more total cost analysis. But just some great scripts, and by the way, if you're on this call, you're listening in, and you upgraded your script, let me know, and even share it in comments or chat of this call. We would love to capture scripts. I was hoping to come to this call with some scripts from that, but between my schedule and just wanting to get more scripts, we're still going to do a little bit more on that. But I did want to at least make sure we shined a light on, to me, the biggest takeaway of all was that, one, you need to be doing a move-up analysis, and two, you need to be partnering with your agent, whether that's doing a video like this is Dan Keller sitting with his agent explaining a story and a strategy. Whether you're doing it on video or whether you're just collaborating, you've got to partner with agents, and you've got to tell that move-up analysis story. So that was a big takeaway I wanted to bring into this call. I just can't emphasize enough that every time you're meeting with an agent, you need to let them know how you're going to help families get off the fence and into escrow, whether it's a first-time home buyer or whether it's a move-up buyer. Make sure you're having that Mortgage Coach conversation, and you want to get them into escrow, create urgency, create value. So with that said, Tanis comes to us from, she's been referred to me a couple different angles. So one, Stacy Hardy, head of production for Cherry Creek Mortgage, just a good friend, industry leader, and someone that when Stacy talks, I listen. He said I need to meet Tanis, and she's someone that could really deliver value on a Tuesday call. And then, of course, Tanis, I saw you on the stage at Sales Mastery. Not only did Tanis have the stage at Sales Mastery this last year, she was on stage at least 2 times. Was it 3, or were it 2 different sessions that you provided?
It was 3 times, just a little bit each day.
Yeah, so I mean, Todd Duncan trusts her, Stacy Hardy trusts her, so do I. I'm looking forward to taking notes. We're going to do something a little bit unique and different. And Tanis, come on stage, show your video. And, while we do have some slides that we're going to walk you through, Tanis is also going to be projecting because she's here to tell us how to speak better. And part of that is just watching Tanis in action. So, by the way, we see you, Tanis. I'm not sure how it looks with the combination of my slides and everything, but assume they can see your slides. I'm going to be, the projector for you, and walk us through some ideas and strategies to improve our presentation.
That sounds wonderful. Well, I'm really excited to join you this morning to share a little bit more about being a powerful presenter, because regardless of how many different speaking opportunities you have, anytime you get up in front of 2 or more people, you want to be making the best possible impression. In fact, Dave, can we start with the poll question and just kind of get a feel to how often everybody on the call is speaking?
Absolutely. So the question reads like this, guys. How often do you speak to large groups? Never, weekly, a few times a year, or often? So please answer that. I had pushed it. Please answer that. How often? Never, weekly. Think of often as monthly, by the way. Think of often as monthly. Instead of often, think of it as monthly. Like every single month, I'm doing this. That's often. So far, it's small group, by the way, Tanis. We've almost got 70% voted. Oh, boom, we just passed the 70%. So we got great participation. By the way, great job, audience. I'm going to share the results for everybody. So very small group, never, is only 18%. Weekly is 5%. Few times per year is the majority. And we got 15% of the, so really, Tanis, netting this out, 20% are talking monthly, very small percent weekly, and less than 20% have never do this. So FYI.
All right, that is some good information. And I would say that question obviously said large groups. The skills that we're going to talk about today come into play anytime you get up in front of 2 or more people. I'm guessing if we asked each of you how often you present in front of 2 or more people, the answer would potentially be daily. For some of you, maybe weekly, but for most of you, it would be daily, because we have these opportunities in our businesses all the time. I want to just briefly go over the agenda so you can kind of see what we're going to talk about today and get an idea of the direction of the call. We're going to cover, why are we speaking? Does it matter? Is it building business? What is it doing for us? We're going to talk a little bit about fear, because usually when I bring up speaking or public speaking, people say, oh yeah, I hate that. We know that it's the #1 fear, and people would rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy, which is strange to me. But we're going to talk about overcoming fear and some great ways and tips that you can deal with the fear that you might be experiencing. And then we're going to dive into the delivery skills. So what are you doing with your body? What are you doing with your hands? What are you doing when you get up in front of people? And is it something that is distracting, or is it something that's really helping your audience get drawn into you as a presenter, really helping them trust you when you stand up as an expert in your field? So the first piece that I want to talk about is, why do we speak? And I want to throw this question out to all of you. Why would you want to be speaking in the mortgage industry? In your positions, what are some reasons that you can think of that you would want to stand in front of a group and speak?
So guys, what I'd love to see you do is, in the question section, just let us know what are some of the reasons why speaking makes sense. I will literally shout those out as you start putting ideas. By the way, to gain their trust, to attract more business, to educate, to network, educate, lead from the front, educate. Come on, guys, let's keep it going. Teach home buyer classes or realtor clock hour classes. Meet with realtors. I'm not going to say educate anymore, because that's been said a lot. It looks like Ray wants to do some recruiting, so we know which side of the business you're on, Ray. By the way, recruiting of agents, marketing, presentations, credibility. So by the way, guys, thanks for all the participation. There may be a few more times where we ask you to participate. Bring it for Tanis. There you have it, Tanis.
Wonderful. Those are all amazing reasons. And I love that so many of you say educate. One of the biggest things that I talk about when it comes to being a presenter is that it's never about you. And that's one of the things that I constantly work to teach people when they're getting up and presenting in front of a group. It's never about you as the presenter. It's not about how your hair looks or how cute your outfit is or even how great your content is. It's really about the audience. And what is it that the audience can take away from us presenting that can change the way that they think, say, do, or feel about the topic we're presenting on? So I love that many of you said educate today. And obviously, speaking can help us build our business. It helps us gain credibility and helps us be seen as an expert. The great thing is that the majority of people are fearful of presenting. If you can overcome your fear of presenting and stand up confidently to teach and to educate, you will quickly set yourself apart in the sea of different people that we have to choose when it comes to doing business. So I want to talk
about... Tanis,
yeah?
I want to say something real quick. So folks, while Tanis created this lens that it's 2 or more people, I also want to create the same lens that this goes for video too. That so often people don't do the video because I don't like the way I look. There's some fear or apprehension. And so I want everybody to have it in your mind. We're not just talking about speaking to large groups of 2 or more. We're talking about doing such videos. Regardless of how you look, I love what you said, Tanis. It's not about us. It's about them. And they want to see us. So I'll let you keep rolling. I'll try not to interrupt you too much.
No, that's a great point. There's always things that when we go back and watch ourselves on video, we say, oh, that looks bad or this looks bad. And the reality is that we shouldn't watch it that way. Instead, we should go to our audience and say, what did you take away from what I presented today that's really going to make a difference in your life or your business? So that is a very important distinction to make, and it actually makes presenting a lot easier because you aren't so concerned about yourself and how you look and being perfect. Instead, you're more concerned about the audience and what they're going to take away. So let's talk a little bit about managing fear. I want you all to take out a piece of paper or find something to write on, or you can take notes in Word, whatever it may be, wherever you're taking notes. And I want you to answer this question for me. I want you to write down, let's say that you are in a high-risk, high-stakes presentation. So this is a very important presentation, whether it's winning business or being in front of a large conference, whatever it is, it's a very big presentation in your world. I want you to write down everything that could possibly go wrong. And you'll probably have really long lists. Some of the things that I often hear in the presentation skills workshop that I do are, well, I could walk on stage and my fly would be unzipped, or I could spill coffee all over my clothes, or maybe when I'm standing up in front of the audience, I'm going to forget my entire presentation. What happens then? So I want you to take just a second and jot down in a high-risk, high-stakes presentation all of the things that could potentially go wrong. All right, I'm sure that you've got a little bit of a list going. When we are talking about fear, in order to overcome our fears counterintuitively, we need to focus on them. The brain really wants certainty. Right? That's really what the brain wants. It wants to know what's around the corner if you get into a tough situation. And that's why I'm going to have you do this exercise this morning of writing down everything that could possibly go wrong. And the second step in this process is next to each one of the things that you wrote down, I want you to put a score between 1 and 10. 1 meaning that this will never actually happen, and 10 meaning that it's definitely going to happen. It's happened to you before, it happens to you every time you speak. I want you to give each item on your list of things that could go wrong a score between 1 and 10.
So guys, let's get it listed out. And what are the things that you're afraid of? What's the worst thing that could go wrong? And let's rate those 1 through 10. And I would love to know your top 1 or 2 fears. So please share those in chat. It would be great to know it. And I think this topic that Tanis is going through is so important because so much of what just gets in the way of success is just people never do it or they don't do it enough. So this fear topic is big. I also want you to all listen to this as you're thinking about it. Some of you are branch managers, some of you are team leaders. Everybody here is a leader to agents. So when you think about what Tanis is, walking us through, not only is this great leadership for you in personal development, this is great leadership to you to bring to your team, to bring to your agents. So I hope you're tuned in. Please participate, and please let me know what your biggest fears are. Tanis and I want to know what your fears are so we can best serve you.
Yeah, that would be great. Let me know if they share some that we can talk through specifically.
Will do. I'm going to go check and see if anybody has shared a fear yet. And folks, some of you, I guarantee it, I can't see you, but you're multitasking right now. You're like, yeah, I'm not going to go through this exercise. I'm going to respond to a couple of emails. Tanis isn't talking. It's a chance to go catch up on some emails. Hey, let's not waste our time. The way you're going to get value is to participate. I'm even taking notes, and I speak a lot. I don't care how much you speak. Walk through it. And if you're not doing it for yourself, do it, because you're a leader to other people. So, by the way, I'm going to start reading some out. Not going to mention anybody's name. So, by the way, you can put stuff here. Don't worry about it. But upset stomach. By the way, I feel you on that. I mean, I remember when I first started speaking, upset stomach would be an understatement. Keeping the audience engaged. Wow, that's a seasoned speaker, and we never get over that, right? I mean, think of Tanis right now. She's speaking to a camera. So think of what she's going through. Forgetting the presentation material, of course. I've been there, done that, and I've done it. Wasn't that bad. That's a bigger fear because you're wondering how much marketing. Okay, I don't understand one. Forget what I'm saying. Again, a lot of forgetting going on. I'll be misunderstood, and they won't correct, and they'll correct me in front of others. That would be uncool.
Oh, that's happened to me before.
I know. Shudder, forget speech, get nervous, free, be boring. Technology malfunction, getting off topic, getting tripped up by a question, right? I mean, that can happen. That's human, by the way. There you go. So good stuff, by the way, gang. So keep it coming. We can't get too much engagement or feedback from you.
Yes, thank you for sharing. Those are all very common fears that people experience when it comes to speaking. So now what you've done is you've made a list of everything that can go wrong. And then you've taken the time to tell your brain how likely it is that those things are going to happen the next time you get up to present. There's one more step to this activity, and that is to choose the number one thing that you are most afraid of, the thing that you just mentioned on the chat, and to write down what are you going to do if it actually happens. Because again, our brains want certainty. They want to know what's around the corner. And here's what's going on. When you get into this high pressure situation and you're very nervous, cortisol starts coursing through your veins, and cortisol does some bad things to your brain. It actually makes your brain swell just a little bit, and your memory center sits in the very center of your brain. So when your brain swells due to the cortisol, your memory center shrinks, which is why so many of you wrote down, I'm going to forget what I'm saying. So we're going to talk about some ways to reduce cortisol before you get up to speak. But right now, I want you to just take 1 second and write down, what are you going to do about that biggest fear you have if it actually happens?
So I hope you're concentrating. I hope you're actually writing that down. I do want to just keep reflecting that lens of making a video, creating a mortgage coach video. What's your biggest fear? And by the way, I think most people would have a hard time coming up with a real fear other than people don't think I look good, or they'll judge me by my appearance, which, by the way, they're going to do that because that's what people do. We judge people by their appearance. Fortunately, there's a lot of opportunities in whatever business you're doing. You're doing it because of how you show up in person and over the phone. But write down, what are you going to do about it? And by the way, anybody that wants to share that, what are you going to do about it? Feel free to share.
And there might be some
driving,
of you.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Tanis. No, I was just going to tell Ed, don't drive and write. You know, some people are driving while they're listening to this. We're not asking you to do that.
Do
Yeah.
this activity later.
Yeah. By the way, here's a couple of good ones. Do it anyway. You know, so just the Nike slogan, just do it. Here's one. I'm going to ask myself if these people are not coming to my funeral, then it really doesn't matter. Something I learned from Darren Hardy to say. So, by the way, love that, Michelle Town. I'm going to call you out on that one, Michelle Town. If these people aren't coming to your funeral, don't worry about it. That's kind of cool. I like that. That's what Michelle's going to do.
That's wonderful. Well, this is half the battle, Dave, is telling your brain, here's how likely it is it's going to happen. If we get in this situation, brain, here's what we're going to do. Because that way, when you're up on stage and the cortisol is running through your veins and you get in this situation, your brain will say, oh, it's okay. We've already thought through this and we can handle this. We're going to look at our notes, or we're going to glance at our outline, or we're going to build our confidence up by saying, hey, these people aren't people that are going to attend my funeral. Whatever it may be, it gives your brain the certainty that it can deal with whatever it is that you're about to deal with. And so I really encourage you, any fears that you might be facing in life, this is a great activity, but especially when it comes to speaking, going through this activity before you get up in front of any size group, just to give your brain the certainty that, okay, I can handle this. Before we move on from fear, and Dave, I actually included the next slide gives this activity, so that way you can remember what it was that we did and you can go back to it later on. But before we move on from fear, I want to talk about a couple of ways that you can reduce cortisol, because as I mentioned, cortisol is that hormone that's coursing through your veins when you start to get nervous, that causes you to forget, it causes you to shake, it causes you to sweat like crazy. All of those things that happen to us in high-risk, high-stakes presentations are because of this fear and anxiety and cortisol. Okay? So a couple of ways that you can reduce cortisol before you get up to present. Number one, memorize the first 30 seconds of what it is that you're going to present. Sorry, Dave, there's not a slide for these. I just wanted to talk through a couple of them. So memorize the first 30 seconds of what it is that you're going to present, because that way, when you do have fear and you get up in front of the audience, you know that you've got the first 30 seconds nailed. And your brain's not going, should I tell this story, or should I tell this story, or how should I start this whole thing? Your brain knows, boom, this is how I'm going to start. I don't recommend memorizing entire presentations, because what happens is you get overload in your brain, and if you forget one line or one paragraph, your brain can shut down and cause you to really mess up and forget where you are. So I recommend memorizing that introduction statement, so when you get up, you can really start confidently. The second thing that I would recommend doing is getting some type of exercise before you present, really within 3 hours of when you present. It might be going for a run. I don't know how athletic everyone is. I'm not very athletic, so I actually do jumping jacks. I'm not kidding. Even before this call, I was standing in the living room doing jumping jacks, because what I want to do is I want to get my endorphins up, because endorphins counteract cortisol. That way, when I turn the video camera on and I've got all these things racing through my brain, my endorphins are counteracting that cortisol that's making me really nervous. So getting exercise within 3 hours of when you're going to give a presentation, or even going into the bathroom stall and doing some jumping jacks or running in place. I gave a TEDx talk last year, and I have never been more nervous for a presentation in my entire life. And here I was backstage where no one could see me dancing like a crazy lady. But that's what I needed to do in order to make sure that when I walked out on stage, I was ready to own it. Another thing that you can do is listen to music or laugh before you give a presentation. You can listen to the comedy channel, whatever it is, anything to get those good endorphins going. The biggest thing about fear is that it primarily comes from the messages you tell yourself. If you tell yourself right before you get up to speak that you're going to bomb it, and you don't really know the content, and your slides aren't everything that you wanted them to be, and you have a stain on your shirt, and all of these negative things, when you step on stage, it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So make sure that you are sending yourself positive messages before you get up to speak. Messages of, it's not about me. I'm here for the audience. I want them to learn something, to take away something from my presentation today. And I don't have to be perfect. No one is ever going to be perfect. Send yourself really positive messages before you get up to speak. And that will help keep the cortisol under control. Dave?
Yep.
Dave, quick question for you. Okay. What was your biggest fear? Did you write one down?
Well, I don't have the big fears anymore, but my biggest fears are always that I'm gonna fumble, or I'm not gonna emotionally engage. My biggest fears are always emotional engagement, and I'm not gonna deliver exactly what I want, the type of impact that I want.
Well, the good news is the next section is going to help you engage your audience. Because we're going to talk about delivery skills. So what is it that you are doing when you get up in front of an audience? And the reason that I really wanted to focus in on delivery skills is because they are the thing that can destroy you the fastest when you get up in front of an audience. We know that within 30 seconds of hearing a presenter, the audience can make up to 158 different descriptors of that speaker. So there's a lot of different ways that the audience can describe you. The good news is that 101 of those things are positive, which only leaves 57 negative descriptors. We want to be sure that every time we get up, we are having people describe us as some of those positive descriptors. So we're going to talk about delivery skills. Dave, you mentioned that people are judging us. That's just the reality of life when we get up to present. And what you see on the slide here are the things that your audience is judging you on. They're judging you on what they can see, and they're judging you on what they can hear. Pretty basic. But we're going to go through each of these things one at a time, and I'm going to give you some tips and some training around these skills to help you feel more confident the next time you get up in front of a group to present. So I want to start with what the audience is seeing. And the first thing that the audience is seeing is your eye contact. Doesn't matter if you're speaking in a room of 500 or 5, the audience, in order to make a connection with you, needs you to make pupil-to-pupil eye contact. It is so much more powerful than a speaker who is scanning around the room and talking to everyone rather than looking into someone's eyes. When it comes to eye contact, we call it S.P.O.C, single person, one connection, S.P.O.C. If it's important enough to come out of your mouth, it's important enough to deliver into someone's eyeballs. And it sounds really basic, but this is potentially the toughest thing that I coach people with. We don't realize how much our eyes flitter around and flutter and look for something to distract us when we're nervous. And I promise you, it is easier to remember your presentation and keep your brain in order if you are making eye contact with your audience. So single person, one connection is what I want you to really practice when it comes to eye contact. And remember, this is in front of 2 or more people. Even when you've got a couple sitting across the table from you at a sales meeting, make sure that you are maintaining great eye contact. It's really hard for me. I have one little eyeball in the middle of my screen to make eye contact with. But on videos, Dave, you mentioned the MortgageCoach videos that everyone is doing. You've got to be looking at that one little eyeball in the center of your computer or at the center of your camera in order for the audience to really feel like, oh wow, he or she is speaking to me. Like they're actually making a connection through a video, through my screen with me. So the eye contact is important both in person as well as in the videos that you are shooting. And it's hard. Don't get me wrong, right now, I feel like my eyes are crossed because I've been staring at the little dot. But keep doing it. It makes a big difference in the videos that you're sending out when I feel like you're really looking at me as your potential customer or your referral client who's getting your video from you. Dave, I'm sure you guys have done some talking around the eye contact piece.
It's an important one, and it is so hard. Like before you even brought it up, just watching you, I'm like, wow, you're good, and you're just living the example. No, I love it, and it is such an important point.
And it's by no means easy. But so Dave, if you go forward one slide, that's just the reminder of S.P.O.C, single person, one connection, having great eye contact. Now there are some people, analytical brains out there, who will say, oh, go back, who will say, how long do I need to stay in each person's eyes? Because it starts to get uncomfortable. Well, if you're doing a video, you have to stay in the camera lens the entire time. I'm sorry if it's uncomfortable. When you are in an audience, I can't give you a magic number of 3 or 5 seconds that you need to stay in individuals' eyes. But what I will tell you is that if you really want to make a connection or make a point, you might stay in their eyes a little bit longer. If you're just working to quickly glance around the room, you might stay in their eyes a little bit shorter. So you just have to really practice with this and really practice looking at people's pupils, not their eyebrows, not their nose or their mouth or over their head, really looking in their pupils. It will make a big difference. So that is eye contact. The next thing that I want
Tanis, real quick, what are the time frame? Like you're talking to let's take a lunch and learn. You know, is it like 3 seconds per, like is 1 second really quick, or is 3 seconds really quick? Give us a range of time that we should look at one person.
Well, I don't want to do that, because what will happen is the analytical brains will start counting. There is
good point.
You have to just try it out. You get up in front of a group, even your office, and make connection for 3 seconds or 5 seconds or 10 seconds and feel how it feels, and then find your right space. I could hold eye contact with someone in an audience for well over 10 seconds, and it wouldn't feel awkward to me, but to them, oh my gosh, they would be sweating. Thinking, why is this presenter looking at me? So, you know, I mean, it could be anywhere between 2 and 6 seconds, just depending on you and the message that you're delivering.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Yeah, you want to be careful not to say, okay, here's 3 seconds with this person, and 3 seconds with this person, and 3 seconds with this person, because you'll become very methodical. So you'll want to mix it up a little bit, but just practice with it, try it out, and see what's comfortable. So the next, perfect. The next skill that I want to talk about is stance. Okay? How are we holding our body when we are in front of a group of people? The first piece of this is having our feet shoulder width apart. Ladies, this is especially important for you. I'm going to back up. Well, I don't know if I can back up far enough for you to see my feet. But women tend to stand with their feet very close together. And it shrinks you, and it just makes you take up less space. When you are standing with your feet shoulder width apart, it gives you ownership. It lets the people that you are speaking to know that right now you are in control of this space. So very important for women and men to stand with your feet shoulder width apart when you are getting in front of a group of people to present. The next piece on this slide is no movement from the waist on down, and this one is really, really tough. Almost as tough as eye contact. It's tough. When we are speaking, we tend to do things like swaying, or maybe we step around, or we pace. Okay? We do all kinds of things. Really, the most powerful place that you can be as a presenter is standing with your feet shoulder width apart and having no movement from the waist on down. For some of you, I think it was 20-some% that are giving presentations in front of large groups. If you have a large stage that you can walk around on, be cognizant that if you do move from this space with your shoulder width apart, that you're moving with purpose. You're not pacing and taking a couple steps and turning, because that becomes very distracting. Instead, you're going to do what I call 4 by 4. You take at least 4 steps, and then you stop. You could take 5 or 20 or 100 steps, depending on how big the stage is, and then you stop, and you plant your feet again, and you speak from there, and make eye contact with at least 4 people. So four or more steps and eye contact with at least 4 people. What this will do for you as a presenter, it will ensure that you don't come across as nervous and pacing on the stage. Overall, however, I would recommend that you stand with your feet shoulder width apart and work on having no movement from the waist on down. That's the most powerful place that you can be anytime you are presenting. It might be kind of tough, right, Dave?
It could be. I'm a pacer. I like to move around. Good advice, though. I actually am speaking later on today, and I'm gonna work on these moves.
I like it. One thing that you can do if you find that you're a pacer or a swayer or a swifter, you can put your toes, you can kind of push down on the bottom of your shoe with your toes, and that will send a signal to your brain that, hey, you're supposed to stand still right now. Okay? So if you're someone who really struggles with moving your hips or swaying or moving around the stage, just push down on the sole of your shoe with your toes ever so slightly, and that will send a signal to your brain to just stop moving. So that is stance. The last piece of what our audience sees are these things right here. Everyone always wants to know, what do I do with my hands? What do I do with these things? We get so wrapped up in our content and thinking that when I get up on stage, my content is so good that I'm going to nail this. And then we get up on stage and these come with us and we think, I don't really know, Ricky Bobby, what to do with my hands. Okay? So I want to talk about the #1 rule when it comes to gestures, and that is don't touch yourself. I know it always gets a little bit of a laugh, but it is potentially one of the most powerful things that I teach, not touching yourself, not doing things like rubbing your hands together or putting your hands into your pockets, right? Not rubbing your pants. There's so many things that we do with our hands that become a distraction to our audience instead of making it a good piece that allows them to be drawn into us. So don't touch yourself. Maybe the toughest thing, but really work on, even when you're just having a conversation with one other person in your office or 2 other people in your office, work on getting your hands away from each other and making gestures. There are a few gestures that I'm going to encourage you to avoid because, well, you'll see why as I demonstrate them. The first is pointing. Pointing comes across very abrasive, and you almost feel like I'm your teacher and you did this wrong. Instead of using a point or a finger point, we can use the palm of our hand open to gesture like this. So instead of saying, oh, you right back there in the audience, we could say, oh, you right back there in the audience. Could you answer that question for us? And it makes a big difference in how the audience will perceive you as a speaker. So we want to avoid pointing. The next one that we want to avoid is our hands in our pockets. And the reason that I'm going to encourage you to avoid this, what happens is when you get comfortable on stage and your hands are in front of a group of people and your hands are in your pockets, you actually begin, and you can't see this too well, but you actually begin to gesture from your pants. And then people are not looking at your eyes anymore. So we don't want to have our hands in our pockets. The palm of your hand is potentially one of the most powerful tools that you have in order to engage and show someone that you are open, you are honest. Okay? We talk about losing our audience. Well, it could be because we are constantly showing them the back of our hand and doing gestures that aren't open. So work on opening up your hands and doing palm out gestures. Again, the not touching ourselves might take you 6 months or a year to perfect. And then you can start working on palm out. But really, these 2 things will dramatically change how you show up every single time you get up in front of a group of people. Those are the skills that the audience is judging us on, what they see. Now I want to talk a little bit about what the audience hears. What the audience hears when you get up in front of the group. There are 5 different power, pace, pitch, punch, and pauses. And I'm going to go through each of them relatively quickly so that way we've got some time for questions. but I'm going to give you some suggestions on each of these. So the first P is power. That's really the volume of your voice. Volume equals perceived confidence, meaning that if I were to stand here today in front of my computer and I were to talk like this, you would perceive me much differently than when I bring my volume up the way that I have been during the whole workshop. Can you hear the difference between this, the mild and meek person, versus this, the confident and ready to share information individual that we all trust because it's obvious she's so confident. She must have some good things to share with us. So bringing that volume up to a 7, even when you have a microphone. All a microphone does is project the voice that you are putting out there. So if you speak very meek and mild, sure, it will be louder when you're using the microphone, but it's still going to come across very meek and mild. Even when you have a microphone on, I want you to work to bring your volume up and portray confidence to your audience. So that's power. The next piece is pace. Sometimes when you're speaking, you're going to go a little bit faster, but you don't want to speak so fast that nobody understands you, because then the audience is going to be wondering, well, wow, how can I ever keep up with this person? You also don't want to speak so slowly that they get frustrated. You want to mix it up when it comes to pace. And I've been working to demonstrate this throughout today's call. Sometimes you go a little bit faster, and sometimes you slow it down when you really want to make a point. When you speak too fast, the audience, they may think that you're intelligent, but they won't develop rapport with you. And when you speak too slow, the audience may think that you're friendly, but they might also think that you're condescending, which is why you want to mix it up and sometimes go faster and sometimes go a little bit slower. So that's pace. The next piece of this is punch. And punch is really emphasizing words. Having emphasis on words, there is at least one word in every single sentence you say that can be emphasized with your voice. And when you work on having punch as you are speaking, it makes you much more engaging. If someone has no punch, then they almost sound like they are just talking in this same little 3 to 5 note range and they never leave, and it would be really boring to listen to them give a presentation. That's why we want to have punch and emphasis, and we also want to have pitch, meaning we go up a little bit and we go down a little bit. So we're really varying our voice in order to make it more engaging for our audience to listen to the things that we are sharing with them. So that's punch and pitch, and this takes some practice. Every morning before I speak, I do some vocal warm-ups, and typically when I'm in a presentation skills class, everyone in the class has to do these warm-ups. But this is a great idea when you're driving in the car or you're in the bathroom doing jumping jacks before your presentation. You can also warm up your voice. And here's a great exercise for you to do. We call it the whoop whoops. You go as high as you can and as low as you can using your voice. So you go whoop, getting really high into that upper range, and then you go ooh, going as low as you possibly can. Obviously, you would never get on stage and speak up here. And you would never get on stage and just speak down here. But doing these warm-ups will ensure that when you get out on stage, you're comfortable going a little bit higher or going a little bit lower at certain times during your presentation. So that's kind of a fun warm-up that you can do when it comes to getting your pitch ready for presenting. And the last piece is pauses. So many people struggle with putting in words like, and, really, so, but, in the middle of a sentence, because their brain is trying to come up with what they're going to say next, and it's so easy to put a filler word in there. When we're talking about pauses, I'm actually talking about filler words, the things that you enter into that pause when it should just be a moment of stopping speaking and being quiet, but instead you put a word in there. And it makes you sound probably not as intelligent as you actually are. A great example of this, when I was first starting speaking, I said the word like all the time. I would just say like, and like it was a word that didn't belong. And my father so kindly pointed out to me, he said, Tanis, you sound stupid when you say the word like. And I am so grateful to him that he pointed that out to me. I didn't even realize that I was saying the word, which might be the case for some of you. There are a few things that you can do in order to help your brain realize that you are saying filler words when you shouldn't be saying them. The best way is to enlist a friend or somebody that you trust to be in the audience and to count your filler words and to tell you, okay, Tanis, you said 15 times during that presentation. You probably need to work on the word Toastmasters is an amazing organization, very inexpensive to join, that allows individuals to work on their speaking skills. One of the things they do at the Toastmasters groups, they have a clicker. And as you are speaking, they click every time you say a filler word. And you have to just keep going and keep speaking through your brain hearing these obnoxious clicks. The reason that they do that is because they need to call your brain's attention to it and help you realize what word you're entering in and where you're entering it into your sentences. If you are someone who has a tough time with filler words, I highly recommend, like I said, having a friend help with this or going to a local Toastmasters group. You don't have to go every single week or join for the next 10 years of your life, but going a couple of times to give you the opportunity to stand up and present in front of a group that's not there to judge you, but instead they are there to help you become the most powerful presenter that you can be. I know we covered a ton of material. Typically this is a full 8-hour workshop, but I went through and I picked out some of the best recommendations and tips that I shared during that 8-hour workshop to share them with you today. Nothing replaces practice, and people don't want to hear that. They want to hear that there's a magic wand that will poof, make them a better presenter, but the reality is that nothing will ever replace practicing. When you have the opportunity to do a really important presentation, you've got to spend some time practicing, not memorizing, but practicing. For today's presentation, I probably went over this material 15 times, and this is a workshop that I present 100 times a year, but I still continuously practice. I want to make sure that what I'm delivering is of value to my audience. I didn't spend hours and hours picking out an outfit. I did put on actual pants, no pajama pants, since I was going to do video. Really, it was about practicing the content and making sure that we could deliver value here today. Obviously, we've covered a ton of ground, and I'm guessing there's some questions. So I want to be sure that we leave some time here at the end, Dave, to open it up for questions of what happens when I get in this situation, or what if, or how do I deal with excessive sweating? Whatever your questions may be, let's go ahead and open it up and see if the audience has some questions about the different presentations that they are giving.
You got it. So first of all, folks, and I do have a couple questions, so I'm going to bring those in, but do ask questions. We've got some time here at the end to do questions, and even questions about video. So whether it's a very small group of 3 or 4 people, whether it's a lunch and learn with a dozen folks, or whether you're speaking to a large group of 20 or more people, let us know what your questions are. Also, I would love a little bit of narrative as to the type of speaking you're doing most often. So for those of you that said you're speaking every week, what are the venues? I would love to know what the Mortgage Coach community, what type of speaking and venues you're doing. So please submit some of that in questions. So here's some questions, in terms of just practice. What is, and the way the word is question is like, how much should you practice? But, kind of what's a high and low of how much practice people put into a presentation, in your opinion, Tanis?
Well, I work with executives who will sometimes put an hour into a presentation in front of their whole organization, which I wouldn't recommend. You need a little bit more time from that, more time than that. The way that I prepare, if I'm giving a really important presentation, I will sit down with a piece of paper. I won't start in PowerPoint. That is the worst thing that you can do. I will sit down with a piece of paper and I will write out everything that I want to say. So that's the first step of my preparation and my practice. So I'll write out everything I want to say, and then what I do is I take that script, per se, and I turn it into bullet points. So I'm turning the presentation into bullet points because I already know everything I want to say. Now I'm turning it into bullet points. And then my third step will be to develop the visual aids if I'm going to have some. You don't have to have PowerPoint, but if you do have PowerPoint, you do that last. And going through this process when you're building your presentation will make the practicing of it so much easier. Because now you have a bullet point list to work from, and you have a PowerPoint that's very simplistic because you're not building your script in the PowerPoint. You built your script when you first started writing. So that's kind of the process that I would recommend. And then as far as if there's a certain number of hours, I mean, I've spent over 200 hours practicing for my TEDx presentation. So I don't know if there's a perfect number. There's other times when I'll spend 5 hours and feel really confident getting up in front of a group of people. But it's really, for me, preparing the speech in that way that helps me be successful when I'm on stage or in front of a group.
Great. So I had someone here that's got, I'm not going to read the whole email, but let's just say they have a condition, narcolepsy, and they really have a hard time standing up in front of a crowd, but can they sit? Can sitting be effective in a live presentation?
Absolutely, it can. I'm actually just going to bring this over here and we'll do a little demonstration. The biggest thing, if you are going to sit during a presentation, you don't want a chair that allows you to do this because that is the exact same as pacing. You want to make sure that you've got a chair that stays in place. That way you're not going to be wiggling and swiveling and moving and becoming a distraction to the audience. The second piece of advice that I have, if you're going to sit during a presentation, get your hands involved the exact same way that you would if you were standing. Because really it's your gestures that draw people in. Remember, I recommend no movement from the waist on down, so it doesn't matter if you're sitting or you're standing, as long as you are getting those gestures involved, you're having great eye contact, and you're using your voice, you will still easily be able to engage the audiences that you present in front of.
Love it. Thank you. That was really helpful. And let's face it, if we're doing lunch and learns at a boardroom, we're sitting, By the way, any feedback, like if you're doing something that's 10 to 15 people at a boardroom style, when do you stand up versus sit down with the audience? Any guidance that you have there as to like when is it time to get up and kind of work the room, and when should you just sit there peer to peer and talk it out? Any guidance on that?
I think that really depends on the overall feel of the room. I mean, if it's a formal presentation, I do recommend standing when you have the opportunity to do so. If I'm sitting in a meeting and I'm just doing a short snippet presentation, I probably won't stand. I'm someone who feels much more confident when I'm standing and have my feet shoulder width apart and can make the connection. So again, I'll stand whenever possible, but it really depends on, I guess, how formal the situation is.
Got it. So we've got a few more minutes, so feel free to keep the questions coming in. I would love to know, I think everything that you said transitioned well into video, knowing that that's such an important part of the mortgage coach community where they're providing graphs and charts, here's the numbers, family, but putting a video on it. And, any guidance or advice that just comes to mind at creating a great personal one-on-one video, like a mortgage coach video. Anything come to mind outside of what you've already shared?
Sure, absolutely. There are some things that we haven't talked about. The first would be framing. So really making sure, I know in your handout that you sent me, you guys talk about background and making sure that you have a nice background that isn't standing in front of windows because then you become a silhouette. But you want to be sure that you're framed relatively tight. So there's not a ton of background. I know it's just your face and it feels very vulnerable. But this is the best way to make a connection. The other thing is the placement of your computer. Many of you have been sending out videos, and I've received lots of different videos from people where the computer is sitting down on your desk and the camera is pointing up at your face. Unfortunately, that's not a very attractive camera angle. Okay? So camera angle is important, and this will help you feel more confident. Today I actually have my computer sitting up on the shelf of a ladder because I knew that I would be standing today, and if I were creating videos to send out to my clients, I would be standing when I recorded them because that's what I feel most confident doing. So this is how I would do it. I would set my computer up on the ladder, have a nice tight shot, make sure that I get my palms in the video a couple of times. Those gestures are really important, even in videos, and that will make for a more successful video when it comes to really connecting and having the person on the other end of the line feel like you took the time to do this well.
Love it. So folks, let us know what you thought of today's call. Did we surpass your expectations with value and takeaways? Was it a solid call? If you are a guest on this call and you want to learn more about Mortgage Coach, click the last option. By the way, we're getting great feedback, Tanis, so survey results are fantastic. Thank you so much. Want to remind everyone, connect with Tanis. She's a great resource. I have a feeling that she's going to become hopefully a regular in the Mortgage Coach community. Hopefully, if you've got the time and the will, we want to have you back. Maybe do something just all around video. So connect with her on Facebook, connect with her on LinkedIn, invite her to be a keynote at sales rallies. You know, she can not only give this presentation and a lot more to agents. So she's a fantastic resource, and Tanis, thank you. I look forward to having you back in the Mortgage Coach community.
Thank you so much for having me, Dave.
Oh, no, it's great to have you. I want to remind everybody that this is recorded, so it'll be available in our YouTube channel by the end of the day. Also, Tanis was kind enough to give us, let us use her slides, so there'll be a link to that in the YouTube description, as well as you can still download it. You got a minute until I'm going to close this call. You can download it. It's in the handout section of GoToWebinar. So, Tanis, thank you for doing that. I just can't emphasize enough how important it is that you're able to have mobile conversations, whether it's with a family or with an agent. So remind you, every single Wednesday at 11 o'clock Pacific, we're having a workshop, and so you're participating. You're using your own mobile device. Everything that we think a mortgage coach should do with their mobile device, we're teaching it to you in a workshop format every week, 11 o'clock Wednesday. So don't miss that. I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up, close it a couple minutes early. Tanis, any last words of advice as we wrap up today's call before we actually close it and say goodbye?
Yeah, I think my biggest piece of advice is that you are so much better than you give yourself credit for. When it comes to presenting, we tear ourselves apart about the little things and the fact that we got tongue-tied during our last presentation. But just be confident that you have amazing knowledge to share with the world, and you can stand up there and present it, and it doesn't have to be as scary as our minds make it to be. So I encourage you to use speaking as a way to build your business, and don't hesitate to reach out if I can be a resource in any way. And thanks again, Dave, for allowing me to join you today and to do something different and have a video phone call that we did training through video.
I loved it. It was great doing something new and different. Can't wait to have you back as a guest, and have an awesome day, awesome week, everybody. Bye now.
Bye.